This video is on GTViewer 20's right mouse menu and how it differs from GTViewer 14 and 15. I think that the right mouse menu is one of the most overlooked productivity enhancement tools in GTViewer, and I wanted to make a specific video on this just to show how it should be used and what it can do for you. So what is the right mouse menu and how do you use it? I'm going to move the mouse over here and right click in an empty space on the map to bring it up. And you'll see there's several different sections of commands. This top section, all of these commands are dependent on the point that you right clicked on to bring up the menu. So if you right click on a point and then choose proximity search, it's going to center your search on the point you clicked on. And that's true for all these. So it'll start the measure from the point, it'll place a GPS reference point at the point, it'll get a coordinate at the point, and or it'll run where am I at that point. So all of those are dependent on where you click. The next sections, these are really just a duplication of what's on the toolbar. What they're here for is you don't have to move your mouse from where you are in the view back to the toolbar and then back to where you were and then back to the toolbar and then back to the where. This is just the most commonly used commands, and there's usually other ways to do these as well, but they're there just because they can save you a little bit of time, especially if you have a large screen and you're having to move the mouse a long way. Another thing that the right mouse menus for is you don't have to go into attribute info mode to get attribute info on a feature. All you gotta do is right click on it. That's why I clicked on empty space to start with, because I wanted to just show the menu. But if I right click here, you'll see the first item in the list is the poll that I clicked on. If I click on it, it'll bring up the attribute info. And if we click in a more congested area, it shows more stuff. It shows all the features at that point at the top of the list. So here's a substation. The substation has a detail. Here's two different primary conductors. And one of the GTViewer 20 features is you can customize what it shows in the menu. And you'll see it's also showing the circuit name and the phase. So let me pick substation. You'll see it has a detail file. We can bring up the detail file by clicking on that or double clicking on that. But we can also say, click on the detail link there, and it just goes ahead and automatically brings up the detail file. Using the right mouse menu to do your attribute info on a feature is the part I think most people don't use enough of, and that's the real productivity enhancement that you're going to get from the right mouse menu, because it's just so easy to get the feature. You don't have to go switch modes ever. It doesn't matter what mode you're in to start with. I could be in red line selection mode and right click and I still get it. Never changing mode. Or I could be in pan mode, pan around and then right click immediately. I don't have to switch back to attribute info and then click on the feature. I just right click and there it is. The next thing I want to talk about is how the right mouse menu is different in GTViewer 20 than it was in previous versions of GTViewer. Let's just quickly switch back over here to GTViewer 15, and I'll do some similar tasks that I did earlier. If I just right click in white space here, you'll see there's a different set of actions or commands, and it's not grouped very well, which is one of the reasons it was changed. And whether or not we're all going to like the new order that the menus are in is a different story, but it can always change in the future if there's complaints. But you'll notice attribute info was the first item. There were only two point-based commands in previous versions of GTViewer, the where am I and the get coordinate. And the rest of these are just commands. Now, some of these items have been merged and some have been removed and some have been added. I'm going to go over these in a little more detail where I can compare them side by side. But they still work the same, and in all the previous versions you could still right click to get the feature attribute info, and all of this worked pretty much the same. Let me click on the substation. You'll see it still had the detail link. All of that's the same. Let's look at the right mouse menus from GTViewer 15 on the left and GTViewer 20 on the right. The first thing you're going to notice is the GTViewer 21 is a little smaller, and it also has an icon for every item in the menu. In GTViewer 15 and before, only the features at the top of the menu had icons. The next section in GTViewer 20, these are all the point-based commands. So when you right-click in the view, that point is going to be fed into each one of these commands. So for the proximity search, it's going to be the center of the search radius. For the measure point, it'll be the first point you're measuring from. For GPS reference point, it's going to be the point where it places the reference point. For XY, it's going to be the point that you copy, the coordinates you copy to the clipboard. And for where am I, it's going to be the point you feed into the where am I functionality to show what polygons that point is in. The next section here is modes, and this is a little different from GTViewer 15 and before. It's got the attribute info zoom mode, the zoom center mode, and the pan. And it's a little different over here. You've got attribute info mode, you've got zoom mode, you've got pan, and it's kind of spread out a little bit, whereas here all the modes are together. In the next section, these two commands are what change the view. Like you can fit the data, or you can go to the previous location in the history. And these items are not, or the fit data is not in the GTViewer 15. And the last section is controlling what's displayed in the view. So you've got your display manager, you've got the toggle for the raster, and you've got the toggle for emphasize session graphics. Emphasize session graphics is not in the GTViewer 15 one. The display manager is, there were two. There was a display filter and a display manager in 15. These have been, the display filter is no longer in GTViewer 20, so it's just a display manager, and the toggle show raster was added. Now in the 15 side, the overview and magnify windows, that was taken out. The last section is in 15 is the set reference point, and this is what sets the GPS reference point, and it also has an option to clear. Now in GTViewer 20, this has been combined and put in a point command. So you just right click, and that's where it puts the GP reference point, and if you do it again, it clears it. So that's a lot simpler than the old method where you had to click set reference point. It would bring up a dialog. You had to say, I want to place it in the view, and then you go click in the view, and then you have to OK the dialog. And it's many steps. Whereas in GTViewer 20, it's just one right mouse click menu item. One thing that is the most different, I would say, in GTViewer 15, there was a select for select mode, and you could, then that's selecting red lines or session graphics, and then the edit properties to edit the properties on the selected red line or session graphics. You don't see those in the GTViewer 20 side, and that's because if you right click on a session graphic or a red line, it will add some additional menus at the top. And I'm going to go through that in the next section of the video. Let's go back to GTViewer 20, and I want to go through the session graphic red line right mouse commands specifically. So the first thing I want to do is draw a red line. I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and I'm in select mode. I want to change it to something else like attribute info mode so that we're not in select mode. Now if I come back over here and right click on the session graphic, I get three new options in the right mouse menu. The session notes is just the normal attribute info reviewing the attributes. Since there's not any attributes on it, it's just showing the where am I, but it does also have the element information. If we come back over here and say edit properties, that's the same as me going to select mode, picking the red line that I want to edit, and then going back and pressing the edit properties button. It's all of that stuff combined into a right mouse click and a selection on the menu. So we can change anything, any of these properties on the menu. I can change the color and so forth. Now, there's only one other thing here we can do. That's if we right click on it and we pick select, it's going to select the red line that I was on. So, and this only works if you have only one selected, but that's pretty easy to do when you're picking the element to edit. So you'll see we're selected. We could do any of the things we can do with a selected element. I can edit the vertexes. I could go back and do the edit properties that way, and then it's done. And I could do that again. Change it. Maybe I want to change it back to a different color. This was a pretty quick run through of what's new and different in the right mouse menu in GTViewer 20. I hope you learned how to use something new, and thanks for watching.